Death Becomes Her feels like a movie made on a dare. Meryl Streep with her head twisted backward complaining about her own shoulders. Goldie Hawn walking around with a shotgun hole through her stomach like it is just another problem to manage. Isabella Rossellini draped in gold selling eternal youth like a curse with perfect lighting. Willis bald and broken stuck between two women who would rather die forever than age normally. But under all that glossy decay, the movie was barely holding its own body together. The ending you remember was not the ending they shot first. A whole different version was filmed, marketed, then quietly buried. The effects looked like dark magic, but behind the scenes, they opened a door the whole industry would soon walk through. And the cast that feels untouchable now only came together after refusals, replacements, and a shoot rough enough to leave marks. These are 10 weird facts about Death Becomes Her. The black comedy critics called hollow until time turned it into a camp immortal. The first director offered Death Becomes Her was Steven Soderbergh, and he turned it down with a sentence most directors would never say out loud. Universal came to him fresh off his 1989 breakout, Sex, Lies, and Videotape. On paper, the pitch made sense. The script was dark, satirical, strange, and funny. Exactly the kind of off-center material people thought Soderbergh might want to swing at. He read it, he liked it, he passed almost immediately. The problem was not the comedy. It was what the comedy required. The film needed dead bodies, twisted necks, blown open stomachs, impossible wounds played for laughs. The gags had to be disgusting and glamorous at the same time. The whole comedy lived inside its visual effects, and Soderbergh at that point in his career did not have the technical machinery to build any of it. He later put it plainly. The project was so far beyond his capability. Then he did something rare for a director walking away from a job. He told Universal exactly who they needed. He said the film required a director with a Zemeckis-like technical facility. Someone whose career had been built on solving impossible physical problems on screen. He was not just turning the movie down. He was naming in plain language the one director in Hollywood who could actually pull it off. Universal eventually went to Robert Zemeckis, who had just finished the Back to the Future trilogy in 1990. A decade of projects defined by visual effects, time-bending physical comedy, and precise technical control. Death Becomes Her arrived in 1992. Forrest Gump followed in 1994. The film sits exactly in the middle of one of the strongest runs of Zemeckis' career. A movie that took its director's recommendation from the man who had just refused it. Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn did not simply get cast against each other. They had been hunting for a movie like this for years. In the early 1990s, the two of them had been actively looking for a project they could co-lead. They had even been attached to the leads of Thelma and Louise at one point, but scheduling got in the way and the studio did not see Hawn as the right fit. Then Death Becomes Her arrived and gave them exactly what they had been hunting for. A two-star vehicle where both women could be equally glamorous, equally ridiculous, and equally vicious, built so neither one could overpower the other. That balance was the whole point. The two characters could not work as a hierarchy. They had to feel like matched weapons. Streep brought the brittle theatrical vanity. Hawn brought the wounded sweetness that curdles into revenge. Two different attack styles calibrated to the same volume, aimed directly at each other for the length of the film. Their real friendship was what made the fake hatred land. They could play women trying to destroy each other because the comic timing underneath was built on trust. The slaps, the insults, the staged moments of mutual ruin only work if both actresses know exactly where the other one is going to be in the frame. Streep and Hawn knew because they genuinely liked each other. Streep joked that Hawn was always late to set while she was always on time and annoying. Hawn accepted the bit, admitting she was probably 15 minutes late to everything. Both have described the relationship with real affection, Hawn praising Streep as a perfectionist and a professional, Streep calling Hawn one of her closest Hollywood friends. Death Becomes Her did not invent the chemistry between them. It weaponized it. A real friendship turned into one of the sharpest fake rivalries in 1990s comedy. Willis was not the first choice for Ernest. He was not the second, third, or even on Universal's original shortlist. The role of the schlubby, henpecked plastic surgeon trapped between two immortal women was originally going to Kevin Kline. He was Universal's first call. The deal collapsed over money. Klein demanded $3 million and the studio refused to pay it. Jeff Bridges was considered next. That deal did not close. Nick Nolte was next after that. Same outcome. 3 of the most respected leading men in Hollywood circled the role, and none of them stuck. Then Bruce Willis walked in, coming off the heels of Die Hard and Die Hard 2, at the exact peak of his action hero stardom. Casting him was a deliberate inversion of his entire commercial brand. The character was every Willis trademark turned inside out. Bald, drunk, cowardly, indecisive, a plastic surgeon who could not say no to either of the women controlling his life. Everything that made his action persona work was deliberately dismantled for earnest. Audiences expecting a hero got a man who could barely survive his own marriage. It was a real career risk. But what surprised the production was how much he loved it. Despite Willis's reputation as a difficult set personality, both Streep and Hawn publicly praised him for being willing to make himself look completely ridiculous. Streep said he was so game and willing. There was no protective ego on set. Zemeckis has said in retrospectives that Willis absolutely loved doing comedy, and the director kept finding him already on the studio lot at 5 a.m, visibly excited to start the day. The role nobody else would take landed with the only actor who actually wanted it. Isabella Rossellini was selling anti-aging cream in real life when she walked in to audition for the witch who sells eternal youth. She was 39, a prominent international supermodel, and at that exact moment the face of Lancome. Her entire public image in 1991 was tied to promoting real-world skincare products. Casting her as the immortal sorceress at the center of the film's magic potion carried a comic layer the marketing department did not even have to write. Rossellini saw it immediately and made it her audition pitch, lobbying Zemeckis with the argument that she worked for Lancome, she sold anti-aging cream, and she was therefore the perfect person for the part. She got it. Then the production built her into something audiences would never forget. Her signature look, the gold necklace that doubles as her only piece of clothing from the waist up paired with a long flowing skirt, was designed as a high-camp distillation of timeless seductress iconography. A single image that communicates power, agelessness, and sex weaponized into permanence. The costume has outlived almost every other detail of the film, appearing in drag tributes, Halloween parties, and Broadway adaptations for more than 30 years. Doekiai channeled the look directly at the 2026 Grammys. Jenna Ortega wore a homage to it at the 2025 Emmys. A 1992 costume keeps reappearing on the world's biggest stages as a reference point for what visual icon status actually looks like. In 1992, no one in Hollywood had ever used CGI to damage a real human body and make it funny. Death Becomes Her was asking for exactly that. Up to that point, mainstream digital effects had mostly been used for things that did not need to look like living human tissue. Terminator 2 had shown liquid metal a year earlier. Jurassic Park was about to put digital dinosaurs on screen. Both were spectacular. Neither required the audience to look at a movie star and believe something impossible was happening to her actual body in the middle of a comedy scene. The team at ILM eventually had a name for what they were inventing. They called it organic CG. The challenge was brutal. Make impossible injuries look seamless while keeping the comedy alive underneath them. The hole through Goldie Hawn's stomach was the first major test. On set, Hawn wore a blue prosthetic insert shaped like the negative space of the wound, functioning like a blue screen target attached directly to her torso. ILM then removed it in post using a digital paint system called Matador, artists erasing the prosthetic frame by frame to reveal what looked like the room behind her. The hole audiences see is not really a hole. It is a carefully erased piece of Goldie Hawn. The other breakthrough was Streep's broken neck. The shot required 2 completely separate performances from the same actress. First, Streep performed the scene physically with her body positioned to sell the illusion. Then she went to ILM and performed the dialogue again as a separate head element. The 2 performances were composited together, producing a character whose anatomy no longer worked but whose timing, expression, and voice were still unmistakably Meryl Streep. Effects were not just for monsters or machines anymore. ILM did not just add effects to Death Becomes Her. It invented a new kind of digital body horror comedy. Meryl Streep hated making the movie so much she swore off the entire genre afterward. Her summary of the experience has stayed consistent for decades. Tedious, like being at the dentist. Whatever concentration you can apply to that kind of comedy is just shredded. The problem was the technology. The effects required Streep and Hawn to stand perfectly still for hours at a time, locked into precise positions so the digital work could line up later. Every gag depended on the actresses pantomiming reactions to things that did not exist in the room, performing rage, fear, or revenge against nothing, holding choreography while crews worked around them. For an actress whose craft was built on responding to other performers in real time, the process was creatively suffocating. After the film wrapped, Streep publicly swore off heavy effects movies entirely. Her direct quote, "My first, my last, my only." She held to it and did not work on another major effects-driven film for the rest of the decade. The physical comedy was brutal in its own right as well. The iconic shovel fight in the fountain required rapid, precise movements with heavy props, and the choreography did not always survive the speed. During one take, Streep misjudged a swing and sliced Hawn's face open with the shovel. Hawn had to be treated on set, and the injury left her with a permanent scar on her cheek. One of the funniest comedies of the early 1990s was being made under conditions that were, for the women inside it, slow, suffocating, and physically dangerous. What ILM invented for Death Becomes Her did not stay inside Death Becomes Her. The same digital bodywork that broke Streep's neck and put a hole through Hawn's stomach pointed directly forward toward Lieutenant Dan's missing legs in Forrest Gump and a generation of digital body manipulation that followed. Several of the same artists moved through that entire run. The same hands on the keyboards in 1992 were on the keyboards in 1993 and 1994. A strange black comedy sat right at the front of one of the biggest visual effects leaps in film history, quietly serving as the proof of concept for everything that came after. The Academy noticed. At the 65th Academy Awards, Death Becomes Her was nominated for Best Visual Effects against Alien 3 and Batman Returns, two dark and technically ambitious franchise films from massive studio operations. The competition was real. Death Becomes Her won. There is a version of Death Becomes Her that nobody has ever seen, and that version had a fourth lead. Her name was Toni, and she was played by Tracey Ullman. This was not a cameo. Ullman had filmed a substantial role across the third act of the original cut. Toni was a bartender who befriends Ernest, helps him stop drinking, gives him genuine emotional support, and ultimately helps him fake his own death to escape the two immortal women hunting him. In the first version of this movie, she was the reason Ernest got out alive. The story then jumped decades forward. Ernest and Toni were shown as an elderly married couple surrounded by family, having genuinely built a life together, while Madeline and Helen tracked them down still young, still beautiful, and completely empty. No family, no warmth, no future beyond each other. A mortal life full of love contrasted directly against eternal youth without meaning. Then Zemeckis screened it for test audiences, who deflated during the softer finale. The warmth slowed the black comedy down and drained the nasty energy the rest of the film had been running on. The cruelty was the whole reason the movie worked. Ending on hope undercut everything that had come before it. Zemeckis killed the version he had already shot. Months after principal photography wrapped, he went back and res-hot the ending entirely. The new finale became the funeral scene audiences eventually saw. Madeline and Helen attending Ernest's funeral as decaying, painted, crumbling versions of themselves, then falling down the church steps and shattering to pieces. The cruel fairy tale logic of the rest of the film stayed intact. Eternal youth got the eternal punishment it deserved. The reshoot erased Tracey Ullman completely. Every scene she had filmed was cut despite Zemeckis calling her performance fantastic. The new version still kept one Easter egg linking back to the deleted footage. The photograph of an elderly Ernest shown at the funeral came from the original ending where Willis had been made up to play himself decades older. Rather than letting the expensive aging prosthetics go entirely to waste, the production took a photo of Willis in the elderly makeup and digitally superimposed his face onto the body of a real mountain climber. Death Becomes Her opened on July 31, 1992, debuted at #1 at the box office, and took about $12 million in its opening weekend. Domestically, the film made around $58 million on a production budget of roughly $55 million, barely clearing its cost in North America. International box office saved it, pushing the worldwide total to around $149 million and making it a modest global success rather than the giant summer smash the marketing had implied. Critics praised the effects and the two leads but found the movie cold, hollow, or too nasty to fully embrace. That became its early reputation. Then time changed everything. Its obsession with beauty, aging, vanity, immortality, and theatrical cruelty stopped reading as a flaw and started reading as a worldview. The film found a major second life in queer and drag culture, becoming a regular presence at repertory screenings, pride events, drag tributes, and Halloween reenactments. The film critics had once dismissed as cold had become a 30-year reference point. The reviews aged. The movie did not. 30 years after it opened, Hollywood started trying to bring it back. Jessica Chastain publicly said she had talked with Anne Hathaway about possibly remaking the film together, but that version never arrived. What actually arrived was a Broadway musical. Death Becomes Her premiered in Chicago in May 2024 before transferring to Broadway, building its entire score around exactly what 1992 critics had dismissed. The cruelty became the music. Across roughly 20 months, the Broadway run played more than 650 performances and sold around 900,000 tickets. It did not come back by softening itself. It came back by becoming more openly what it had always been. Campier, meaner, more theatrical, more aware of the joke underneath the beauty. The culture that once hesitated finally learned how to meet it at full volume. 30 years later, the movie got revived by a world that had finally learned how to enjoy the poison.